Srimad Bhagawatam. Reading from not Isha-Upanishad, from Bhagavatam. Canto 3, Chapter 9, Text 10. Agni. Oh. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Narayana Budbhuto Yam Dharana Kramaha. From Narayana comes this phonetic, this alphabet. So we can't say anything without the mercy of Narayana, of Krishna. Agni, Apratarta, Karna, Nishi, Nishayana, Agni Apratarta, Karna, Nishi, Nishayana. Okay, I'll play by the Brahma Samhita meter. Agnya Pratarta Karna Nishi Nishayana. Nana Manorata Dhiya Kshana Bhagna Nidra Nana Manorata Dhiya Kshana Bhagna Nidra. Daiva Hatarta Rachana Rishayo Api Deva Daiva Hatarta Rachana Rishayo Api Deva Yushmat Prasanga Vimukha Iha Samsaranti Yushmat Prasanga Vimukha Iha Samsaranti. Ahnya Pratarta Karna Nishi Nishayana. Nana Manorata Dhiya Kshana Bhagna Nidra. Daiva Hatarta Rachana Rishayopi Deva. Yushmat Prasanga Vimukha Iha Samsaranti. Please chant.
Anya Pratarta Karana Nishayana. Nana Manorata Dhiyakshana Bhagna Nidra. Daiva Hatarta Chanashayopi Deva. Yushmat Prasanga Mukha Iha Samsaranti.
Agni Apratarta Karana Nishi
Karta Karna Nisayana. Mana Manoratha Hiya Tana Bhagna Nidra. Daiva Hatartha Rachana Risayopi Deva. Yusmat Prasanga Vimukha Iha Samsaranti.
Agni during the daytime. Aprita engaged. Artha distressing engagement. Karana senses. Nishi at night. Nishayana insomnia. Nana various. Manoratha mental speculations. Ya by intelligence. Kshana constantly. Bhagna broken. Nidra sleep. Daiva superhuman. Ahata artha frustrated. Rachana plans. Rishaya great sages. Api also. Deva O my Lord. Yushmat your lordships. Prasanga topic. Vimukha turned against. Iha in this material world. Samsaranti do rotate. Such non-devotees engage their senses in the very troublesome and extensive work. And they suffer insomnia at night because their intelligence constantly breaks their sleep with various mental speculations. They are frustrated in all their various plans by supernatural power. Even great sages, if they are against your transcendental topics, must rotate in this material world. Purport. As described in the previous verse, people who have no taste for the devotional service of the Lord are occupied in material engagements. Most of them engage during the daytime in hard physical labor. Their senses are engaged very extensively in troublesome duties to the gigantic plans of heavy industrial enterprise. The owners of such factories are engaged in finding a market for their industrial products, and the laborers are engaged in extensive production involving huge mechanical arrangements. Factory is another name for hell. At night, hellishly engaged persons take advantage of wine and women to satisfy their tired senses, but they are not even able to have sound sleep because their various mental speculative plans constantly interrupt their sleep. Because they suffer from insomnia, sometimes they feel sleepy in the morning for lack of sufficient rest. By the arrangement of supernatural power, even the great scientists and thinkers of the world suffer frustration of their various plans and thus rot in the material world birth after birth. A great scientist may make discoveries in atomic energy for the quick destruction of the world and may be awarded the best prize in recognition of his service or disservice. But he also has to undergo the reactions of his work by rotating in the cycle of repeated births and deaths under the superhuman law of material nature. All these people who are against the principle of devotional service are destined to rotate in this material world without fail. This verse particularly mentions that even great sages who are averse to the principles of devotional service to the Lord are also condemned to undergo the terms of material existence. Not only in this age, but formerly also, there were many sages who tried to invent their own systems of religion without reference to devotional service to the Supreme Lord. But there cannot be any religious principle without devotional service to the Lord. The Supreme Lord is the leader of the entire range of living entities, and no one can be equal to or greater than him. Even the Lord's impersonal feature and all-pervading localized feature cannot be on an equal level with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, there cannot be any religion or system of genuine philosophy for the advancement of the living entities without the principle of devotional service. I'm going to read that again. I read it therefore, and I didn't catch what came before. The Supreme Lord is the leader of the entire range of living entities, and no one can be equal to or greater than him. Even the Lord's impersonal feature and all-pervading localized feature cannot be on an equal level with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, there cannot be any religion or system of genuine philosophy for the advancement of the living entities without the principle of devotional service. There's no devotional service with the localized, with the impersonal feature or the all-pervading localized feature. Therefore, there cannot be any advancement without devotional service. The impersonalists who take much trouble and penance and austerity for self-liberation may approach the impersonal Brahma Jyoti, but ultimately, because of not being situated in devotional service, they glide down again to the material world to undergo another term of material existence. This is confirmed as follows. Yin yiravindakshavimuktamaninas tvayastabhavad avishuddha buddhaya aruhya kirchena param padam tata patantyadhunadrita yushmadam kriyam. Persons who are falsely under the impression of being liberated, vimuktamani, without devotional service to the Lord, may reach the goal of the Brahma Jyoti, but because of their impure consciousness and for want of shelter in the Vaikuntha Lokas, such so-called liberated persons again fall down into material existence. Therefore, no one can manufacture any system of religion without the principle of devotional service to the Lord. As we find in the 6th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, the initiator of religious principles is the Lord himself. In Bhagavad Gita also we find that the Lord condemns all forms of religion other than that which entails the process of surrendering unto the Supreme. Any system which leads one to the devotional service of the Lord and nothing else is actually religion or philosophy. Any system which leads. In the 6th canto we find the following statements of Yamaraj, the controller of all unfaithful living entities. Dharmam tu sakshad bhagavat pranitam navaividur rishayo napi deva nasiddhamukya asura manushya kutonu vidyadharacharanadeha svayam purnad shambhu kumare shambhu kala kumara kapilo manu prahlado janako bhishmo balir vayasakirvaya dvada shaite vijanimu dharmam bhagavatam bhuta guhyam vishuddham durvodham yam yad vamritam ashvite. The principles of religion are initiated by the Supreme Personality of Godhead and no one else, including the sages and demigods, can manufacture any such principles. Since even great sages and demigods are unauthorized to inaugurate such principles of religion, what to speak of others, the so-called mystics, demigods, human beings, vidyadharas, and charanas living in the lower planets. Since even great sages and demigods are unauthorized to inaugurate such principles of religion, what to speak of others, such as the so-called mystics, demons, human beings, vidyadharas, and charanas living in the lower planets. 12 personalities, Brahma, Narada, Lord Shiva, Kumara, Kapila, Manu, Prahlad Maharaj, Janaka Maharaj, Bhishma, Bali, Shukadeva Goswami, and Yamaraj are agents of the Lord authorized to speak and propagate the principles of religion. The principles of religion are not open to any ordinary living entity. They are just to bring the human being onto the platform of morality. Non-violence, etc., are necessary for misguided persons, because unless one is moral and non-violent, one cannot understand the principles of religion. To understand what is actually religion is very difficult, even if one is situated in the principles of morality and non-violence. It is very confidential, because as soon as one is conversant with the real principles of religion, he is at once liberated to the eternal life of bliss and knowledge. Therefore, one who is not situated in the principles of devotional service to the Lord should not pose himself as a religious leader of the innocent public. The Upanishad emphatically forbids this nonsense in the following mantra. Andham tamam pravishyanti yesham bhutim upasate tato bhuyayvate tamo yausam bhutyam vrata. A person in ignorance of the principles of religion, who therefore does nothing in the matter of religion, is far better than a person who misguides others in the name of religion, without reference to the factual religious principles of devotional service. Such so-called leaders of religion are sure to be condemned by Brahma and other great authorities. Om Jnana Timirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakya Chakshurunhi Dhamyena Tasmai Shri Gurave. Any questions? How's your class? It's quite a lengthy purport. Anyone remember anything from the purport? The 12 Mahajans are qualified. Anything else?
Non-devotees use wine and go to women, like my friend.
Nice. Yeah, at the end of a tiring day in the hell of a factory, then they rest their senses by indulging in wine.
We need to be moral and non-violent just to be barely considered for religious life. And then you can understand the religious principles. But you cannot be violent.
As a starting point.
Yes, or you need to be moral.
And even the scientists who make atom bombs and get Nobel Peace Prizes still have to suffer the results of their karma, of their good work and their misdeeds.
Nice. The disservice. Yeah, you can get a fancy Nobel Peace Prize, but you still have to cycle through some sort of. Wow, everyone's listening so attentively. That was awesome.
It's better to be non-religious than to mislead people.
Nice one. Yeah.
To be religious is to give devotional service to the Supreme Personality of God.
Nice. Yeah. That's real religion.
Not even impersonalism or the localized aspect is equal to devotional service.
Yeah, I really like that point. You know, it's like how much devotional service can you render to the impersonal feature of the Lord? You can, I guess, share your light or something. What is that devotional service to? How do you know, if your Ishta Devata is the universal form, then where do you go to serve him? Well, I guess you cycle through samsara. You get to keep serving the universal form in the material world. Ajna pratartha karuna nishinishayana nana manorata dhiyakshana bhagna nidra deva hatartha rachana rishayopi deva yushmat prasanga vimukha iha samsaranti. Such non-devotees, which non-devotees? We heard yesterday, those who are engaged in sense gratification under Maya Balam. It was a nice word in yesterday's verse. Maya Balam, glossed here with the word Daiva, superhuman, that very powerful Maya energy, external energy of the Lord, keeps such non-devotees engaged in very troublesome and extensive work. And they suffer insomnia at night because their intelligence constantly breaks their sleep with various mental speculations. They are frustrated in all their various plans by supernatural power. Even great sages, if they are against your transcendental topics, must rotate in this material world. That was the one Kusha pointed out. Even great sages, never mind great sages, Prabhupada's pointing out, these Nobel Peace Prize winners. That's sort of our modern day rishi, modern day sage, or scientists who perform something wonderful. Even such wonderful performances by these people doesn't get you out of this cycle of birth, death, and old age under the daiva, superhuman supervision of the Lord's external energy. Daivi hiesha gunamai mama maya duratyaya. Very difficult to cross. Maya metam taranti, maya metam taranti, mava eva ye prapadyante, maya metam taranti. So, but prapadyante, by surrendering to the Supreme Lord, then maya metam taranti, then it's very easy to cross over this daiva, this superhuman controlling factor of the material world. This, when I read this, yesterday I was chanting Bhaja Ure Mana. I just felt like singing it on the harmonium. And when I read this, that they suffer insomnia at night because their intelligence is always guided by these manoratha, mental speculations. Mana, mind, ratha, chariot. It's a very graphic visual, it's just this chariot just zipping all over the mind. U-turn, dust going up. I sort of have this, somehow it kind of plays in my head in this sort of Walt Disney cartoony way. And your brain's just totally rattled by these mental speculations, the chariot of the mind just whipping back and forth. And the poor soul, he's like totally let go of the reins, or he's got the reins and he's the one shooting it back and forth. The intelligence is the charioteer, is the driver, and the reins of the mind. And it's supposed to control the senses, but this mind is just running wild when that intelligence is misguided to gear one towards sense gratification. So in Bhaja Hreman, in this prayer, Shita tapo pata varishana edine jamini jagi edine jamini jagi. Day and night I'm up, suffering, sita atava, cold and heat, bata varishana, wind and rain. Edine jam. I'm up all this time. Why? For what purpose? What's the next line? What is the purpose? Serving miserly and wicked men. I remember the English. What's the Sanskrit? Durman. I'm sorry, I must find it. Vipale save. Vipale sevano kripana durjana kamala dala chapala sukha labha lagire. Kamala dala jala is the next verse. Chapala sukha labha lagire. It's not even for any permanent solution. You're serving these miserly and wicked men for a flickering second of sense gratification. It's this sort of, I think we just had that a couple of verses ago in this chapter. One of the verses said, for a very temporary benefit. It was the end of one of those verses. For a split second, you're willing to undergo so much, not only so much difficulty, but so much sinful activity. What a great disservice. What is it? Some 60, 70, 80% of scientific research is geared towards military application. It means it's not geared towards facilitating better future living. It's facilitated towards creating destruction of the world. This, in that famous purport written by Prabhupada, self-aggrandizing leaders will stop at nothing to create disruption in society or destruction. Disruption, destruction, so many disservice, disruption, destruction. It's this sort of mantra of material advancement. So advancement of civilization means gear all your resources towards defense. Eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. It's reached such a point of fear that defense is primary. Put up borders, higher borders, build a wall, block out the enemies. For a moment of sense gratification, we're serving wicked and miserly men. And we can see that externally, that you're engaged in factory work or whatever it is for this few pennies. But even on a very internal level, the wicked and miserly men are the senses. They're whipping you. We're all whipped by our senses. The tongue demands something, and instantly, oh, okay, I gotta go eat it. You walk by Subway and then blast that smell at you, and you're like, ah. It's like madness. The tongue, the eyes. Tongue is pulling you one way. The ears are pulling you another way. And this way, one's position as lunanti is destroyed. Just like a man who has many wives all pulling in different directions for gratification. It seems like a very enjoyable situation, yet it means your position is destroyed. So Sita Atava Bhata Varishana, suffering all these various conditions and calling it enjoyment. That's the greatest trick of Maya. I had a very close, my best friend actually, in high school. We had so many fun adventures together, but he was a real party animal. And I remember when we parted ways, we reconnected at one point, and he hadn't changed a bit. And he was boasting on social media that he had partied all night long, and he had run and vomited 2 seconds before taking a big test and still passed it. And he received hundreds of accolades, very popular guy. And everyone was praising him. Wow, you really did it, bro. You partied so hard, vomited right before the test, and you still passed. And this is as cool as you can get, man. That's like, you really made it. Your liver is shot, the people praising you would just as soon kick you to the curb the second you didn't supply them sense gratification. It's really foolish, from an outside perspective. When you're looking in, you kind of, what is that? It's hell. It's hell, and yet we call it enjoyment. So this factory means hell. This factory of the material world means hell. But yet when we're absorbed in it, then we think it's heaven. We think, oh, I'm really getting some sense gratification here. They're tired senses. What they really need is sleep. But they can't sleep because their mind is racing. Or they can't sleep because they're drinking and partying all night. And then the next day they wake up tired. It's quite amazing. Suffer insomnia. Their intelligence constantly breaks their sleep with various mental speculations. And also, this is, interestingly, Prabhupada points out the slaughterhouse of mundane education. He says it quite often, that you get through your education just so that you can wag your tail at someone's door and beg for a job. That's what education means, creating Shudras. It's really quite pathetic that our whole education system is to create another cog in the wheel. It's not to create leaders, it's not to create thinkers. That would be too subversive, that would be too industrial. So what you need to do is stay in your place, wag your tail, and beg for a job. And then you're a good contributing member to society. Then you're supplying your taxes, you're supplying everything necessary. It's ridiculous. What education should be is to create educated thinkers, to create real rishis, to create leaders, brahmanas. You don't need an education to perform Shudra work. for that you need trade schools. Some people who are ahead of the curve have realized that they can actually do better in society by going to a trade school. Like Mukunda, he's becoming an electrician. He does so much better studying under another electrician who needs a 4-year college degree to run the wires of a house. You don't need all those other credits. Anyway, that could be a whole seminar in and of itself, the slaughterhouse of mundane education. So factory, another name for hell. And after that hellish day of working in a factory, then sleep is interrupted by insomnia. So much frustration and difficulty. What's the word for frustration? Ahata artha. This verse particularly mentions that even great sages, averse to the devotional service of the Lord, are condemned to undergo the terms of material existence. And then Prabhupada takes this in an interesting direction. So these great sages, he immediately jumps to impersonalists. So Paramahamsyas, there's two types of Paramahamsyas. There's the devotional Paramahamsya and the impersonal Paramahamsya. My father and I memorized Dhruva's prayers. There's that one, Bhuyo nama sadvrijina chade satam asambhavayakira satvamurti punapumams paramahamsya ashame I'm missing one word. Shukadeva Goswami is again offering his obeisances to the Supreme Lord, who cuts off the difficulties of the devotee. Sat vrijina chade satam asatam asambhavaya. And for the non-devotees, he is the cause of their further frustration. In the next verse, it even says, nirasta, kuyoginam nirasta. He destroys all their aspirations. And for the Paramahamsyas, anumrigyadashase, he gives them their specific destinations. So for the devotional Paramahamsya, he situates them very highly. They can get their situation in the Vaikuntha planets in some wonderful place. And conversely, anumrigyadashase, for the impersonalists, he'll situate them back in the material cycle of samsara. A nice point made, because this Ishopanishad verse was quoted, I think it's in that purport. Prabhupada was pointing out that for Jai we have a form to focus on. When we see the lotus feet of Panchatattva, when we see those beautiful, smiling forms of Jagannath, Baladev, and Subhaja, when we see the murtis of our spiritual lineage, we have something to focus on, something very attractive. But for the impersonalists, when your whole concept of God is negation, not this, not this, not this, then eventually you have to come up with something. And by mental speculation, you come up with this impersonal form. Okay, not this, not this, not this, so then nothing. And this impersonal form, after undergoing so much trouble, aruhya kripshena, you finally get parampadam. You get this highest point, which is repeated again at the end of the purport with yahu sambhutyam rata. You get this sambhutya. Sambhutya means the independent, absolute truth. You get this, but in its impersonal feature, and therefore patantyadho. Again, you fall back down into material existence. Andham tama pravishyanti. This last verse quoted, the Ishopanishad verse. Ye asambhutim upasate. Those who are worshipping the demigods. Prabhupada translates asambhutim as demigods. Asambhutim, he mentions in the purport of that Ishopanishad verse, means those who are dependent, not independent. So the demigods are not independent. And by worshipping them, one gets the result one would get through the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but by an indirect way. You could just scratch it, but they reach around a very indirect way, and they get their results. And Prabhupada mentions, when he quotes this verse, he says that someone who misguides others in the name of religion, without reference to factual religious principles, is condemned by Brahma and other great authorities. I suppose the point being that one who's worshipping demigods and worshipping the impersonal absolute will then want to preach that to others. Tato bhuya ivate tamo. Even more so, again, bhuya, even more despicable than worshipping the demigods is this impersonal form of the Lord. So instead of manufacturing a system of religion, Prabhupada goes to great lengths to stress the importance of following the 12 Mahajans. In the purport to that verse, he says that one should follow one of the 4 bona fide sampradayas: Lakshmi, Kumara, Shiva, Brahma. So we're in the Brahma Gaudiya Sampradaya. Sort of a very unique, beautiful offshoot of the Brahma Madhva Sampradaya, this Gaudiya aspect that we get, this lineage coming from Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. It's sort of like you have this ancient lineage, and then you have this sort of little spike resurgence of Krishna's direct participation in teaching and sharing with Harinam Sankirtan 500 years ago. This is extremely special. Interestingly, Yamaraj is speaking to the Yamadutas, and he includes himself in this list of Mahajans, which one might consider pretentious or self-indulgent. But it's amazing that in devotional service, one should be very proud to be part of such a lineage. One should be very proud to repeat what one has heard from his spiritual master, from Srila Prabhupada, from the previous great acharyas. One should not be proud of one's own learning. That will be one's demise. But being proud of one's spiritual heritage is something wonderful. If you're shameful of it, then why would you want to share it with anyone else? So it's quite nice, actually, that Yamaraj includes his own participation in this lineage as one of the Mahajans. Any comments or questions? I mean, there's just, we could speak sort of forever on this verse and purport. There's a lot more that could be said. Really nice verses quoted, and wonderful purport. Wonderful verse. Any comments, questions? Or is everyone eager for the Ekadasaic feast that's around the corner? The engagement of the senses and prasad is wonderful. Actually, that is one other thing that popped into my head, since no one has any comments or questions, is this word prasanga. Prabhupada translates as topic. So those who are against the transcendental topic must rotate in the material world. This word prasanga, so sangha, we all know what sangha means. Anybody, any of our Bhakta class devotees want to say what sangha means? Association, yeah. So association is so prasanga means very close association. So when Kapila Muni is talking to his mother Devahuti, he has this very nice verse. Prasangam vacharam bhasham atmaram kavayo viduhu sa esha sadhu shukrito moksha dvaram bhagavatam. So just like this great eagerness we have to take prasad, it's through the medium of the tongue that you're enjoying your senses. But when you transfer that enjoyment from something material to something spiritual, instead of locking one into the material world of repeated births and deaths, it opens the door for liberation. Moksha dvaram means the door to liberation. Apavritam becomes open. When one transfers this prasanga, instead of aversion to the Supreme Lord, or as said here, those who are against your transcendental topics, when we become inclined toward the transcendental topics, then moksha dvaram apavritam. Or in this verse, prasangam ajaram pasham. One has very strong attachment to this material entanglement. When one transfers that attachment to the sadhus, saeva sadhushu krito, when it's krita, when it's applied to the sadhus, then moksha dvaram apavritam. So it's very important that we transfer our attachments for all of the senses, for everything in this life. We transfer the attachments from the mundane to the spiritual, from the impermanent to the absolute, from darkness to light. And that transfer of attachment is not the impersonal negation of attachment, but just giving it a higher purpose. And by that higher purpose, paramdrishvani vartate, then the lower purpose automatically is dispelled. So, prasangam, we're into attachment. We like attachment. We just want it to be attached to the correct thing. Attached to the devotees, attachment to the Vaishnavas is the greatest form of attachment. And if you don't have a Vaishnava that you're attached to, then we can link elbows and skip to the prasadam altogether. I'll be your partner. Alright.
Quick question.
Yes.
So it says here, even the localized feature cannot be on equal level with the Supreme Personality of God, which means the Paramatma feature. So when I was thinking in case of Dhruva Maharaj, he was meditating on the Paramatma feature of the Lord, and he still had the impression.
But then the Lord came, and when he saw him, he said I was looking for shards of glass, but he gave me.
Yeah, so Dhruva, the specific case of Dhruva, yes, he's worshipping the Paramatma feature, he's worshipping the Lord within his heart. But when he witnessed that Paramatma feature, he didn't think it was himself, which is the fall down of a lot of yogis, is that they worship Paramatma. When they finally attain that realization, then they think, oh, I'm finally seeing myself. And it's stripped of devotional service. So the fact being, as Prabhupada pointed out in the purport, one can't perform devotional service to that localized feature, to the localized, what is it called? Spread out feature, or the impersonal feature. But when he sees that Paramatma form, and he says, oh, I want to offer prayers to you, instantly that's one of the 9 processes of devotional service. So his response was to offer prayers.
I remember well because he was also advised by Narada Muni to worship the personal form of the Lord.
Yeah. So it's beautiful. Yeah. Dhruva Maharaj was so fortunate to have his spiritual master be directly Narada Muni. And there's what a good example of that transference of attachment. You know, his attachment is so strongly, let me get a kingdom. Not just any kingdom greater than Lord Brahma's. Let me get that. And then when he sees the Lord, instantly, he's like, forget that kingdom. And when I said we could skip elbow to elbow to the prasadam, I was reminded in India when I joined the Jagannath Puri ashram, there was one brahmachari who always liked to hold pinkies with me and skip to the ocean. And my Western mind was very averse to this concept of holding pinkies with someone. And I felt very, it was a very, at first shameful sort of like, I couldn't wait to let go of the pinky. And after a couple of weeks there, his name was Padma Lochan, I think. No, Premanjana. His name was Premanjana, very nice brahmachari. I saw him later in Mayapur. But after a couple of weeks seeing his dedication to devotional service, I became very attached to him. And I was very happy to skip to the ocean, to the Haridas Thakur's Charanamrit ocean, and take bath there in the company of the other brahmacharis. So that transference of attachment from material conception of, oh, this is whatever sort of weird thoughts I had, to, oh, this is wonderful. You know, that association with the devotees is so pleasing. Touching the bodies of the devotees is one of the things mentioned when Ambarish Maharaj, I think, in the description of how he's utilizing all of his senses in various ways in devotional service. The sense of touch and touching the bodies of devotees is a very wonderful process. And with that, go take prasad. Thank you all so much.